Mr. McDonald?
Here.
Ms. Sui?
Here.
Mrs. Tober?
Here.
Ms. Virtue?
Here.
Ms. Birch? Here. Mr. Palmer?
Here. We haven't been in executive session earlier, so I'd like to move on to correspondence. But first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the first meeting of the new school year. I'm sure we'll hear about how all that went, the opening of school.
Well, we're all here. That's
good.
news.
Correspondence.
None.
Okay. Report of the superintendent.
Good evening, everybody. So tonight we are going to have a presentation on the park scores, but before we do that, I would like to introduce our new student representative for this year, Jack Broderick from the high school. And Broadway, yes, and Broadway. So Jack has prepared a report for us this evening. So before we get into park, and force Jack to sit through that. I thought maybe he could give his report. Yep.
Hi, everyone. For
And
those
I
of you,
have to say, though, I do love you, Susan.
oh,
Yeah.
You were so perfect.
thank you.
He was.
Thank
You
you
were
very
just so perfect. I still have the vision.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure. Yeah, Broadway, yeah.
No, but Susan, it was just great. And do you have the mic up there?
Oh, it's right here.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I digress.
That's okay. I'll just project.
No. There you go. All
Hi,
right.
everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jack Broderick. I am a senior here at Bernard's High School, and I'll be representing the student body here for the 2017-2018 school year. Just a very quick report. Not too much has happened from the beginning of school, but today we completed our 10th day of school. In terms of student life-related highlights in the past couple weeks, the senior barbecue was September 10th. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but I heard the event was very fun from friends who went. This month has also been a big month for students and their path to college, with college applications currently underway. On the athletic and extracurricular spectrum, BHS fall sports are underway currently, and the fall play is planning to hold auditions this coming Friday. Club boards are also meeting to prepare for the first club fair of the week of October 1st. Academically, freshmen are adjusting to the high school environment, which is always fun to watch, because I went through that, watch them go through it. It's a little bit of a hectic experience, but everyone learns the ropes by October-ish. The peer leadership program is also in full swing with regular Friday meetings with the freshmen. The National Honor Society is also preparing to launch its peer tutoring program by next Wednesday, so that'll be really great for the freshmen who are struggling in their classes, so they can also help them adjust. Just in closing, that's all I have for tonight. Not much has happened, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have for me.
Jack, on behalf of the board, we want to welcome you and look forward to your reports every month. So welcome to the Board of Education meetings.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So Jack will be, the board will, as the year goes by and issues come up, they'll ask you to maybe go back to the students and get a feeling, or, bring us some feedback, and it'll be an ebb and flow, you'll see, as we go on. But the one thing, you never have to worry about taking up too much time or any of that stuff, because it's important, we are here, we are a school district, so we are here for the purpose of our students, so we love to hear from the students.
Absolutely.
So whatever you feel is pertinent, we're more than happy to listen to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. In terms of the media center, are all the students pretty happy with that? Is that functioning the way
Everyone
students
I've
have?
talked to loves it. It's a perfect balance between there's areas for you to study, there's areas for you to hang out with your friends, there's a place for you to eat if it's your lunch period and you're trying to get some work done in a quieter space.
Except you can't have your lunch.
Yeah, your lunch.
In the area before.
Snacks, no lunch, too much trash.
Oh, I see.
I just talked to the principal, yeah, snacks, no
Okay.
lunch.
The after-school hours, is that, are we providing a sufficient amount of time?
It is. I used it last June to study for finals, and it was very helpful.
Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
So before you leave, Jack, let me walk out with you.
Perfect.
If you want to get in the car.
Sure.
That concludes my portion.
Okay, thank you.
So we do our yearly presentation. The state of New Jersey sent us a letter that it was required to do the presentation. It's more than part. There are other testing results that we're presenting here tonight. Grant is our district testing coordinator and does a great job with it. He has a presentation that'll give us some insights into the results, some analysis. He also has a hard copy of this.
I show here after the presentation, so.
Thank you.
You guys turn on?
Hi everyone. Usually there's a huge hurrah of like student celebrations and I get to go after that. Now we're celebrating testing, which I don't think is a celebration, but more informative than anything else. You're welcome to come around if you can see it, that's great. If not, you have a presentation in front of you. So I'm going to try to be as brief as possible as I can. You are welcome to interject me if you have any questions that you may have that come up. Please feel free to do so. But it is the overview, and this is our third year of Park, so I wanted to give you an idea of, first of all, what am I reporting on? So this is the assessment program that the results that are being presented for the assessment program for New Jersey State. So in 2017, it marked the third year of assessment in the Park test that we have, and students took part in English Language Arts and Literacy in grades 3 through 11 in their grade level content, and also students took the Park assessments in grades 3 through 8 in their grade level assessment, and also in the course assessments in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. I know I get the question every year, I think it's from Mr. Palmer, who says, can we compare between our school and to our district factor group? And the question and the answer is no, not yet, and it's because we have this statute that I have to report on, or we have to report on results after 60 days of getting the results back. And so during that time, there's an embargo on the data that we have for what other school districts' performances are. So we expect the state to release that data sometime at the end of October-ish. We have no idea when it's coming out. But at that time, I do a little analysis back to where we compare to other school districts. So the only information that we get from the state are how did the states compare to us, how does the district favor, and also how does the Park consortium as a whole on their averages. So that's what I'll be reporting out.
Can I just ask that we have that presented when that analysis is done to the board like this? All right, so the comparative analysis, when it's done in October?
I can do whatever you need me to do, yeah.
That's okay.
It probably won't be in October, and I know Grant would have to do the analysis.
When it comes out, I will do my best for the time frame, and I'll let
Yeah, when it's
Dr.
available.
Wood know.
Yeah,
Yep.
when it's available.
Okay, no problem. The other reports that the other assessments I'm reporting on is the NJS for grade 4 and grade 8 in science. We still have the NJS. There's some changes in science, especially with the next generation science standards. So this is the last year that we're reporting on NJS because there's a new assessment program. And also for the end of course assessment for biology. Again, it's the last year that we have for that assessment. So just want to give you an overview of the performance levels and the results that are being shown from Park. Versus from NJS, we have 3 levels. That was partially proficient, proficient, advanced proficient. If you're familiar with that language a few years ago, Park now introduced 5 new levels, and they are not meeting grade level expectations, partially meeting, approaching grade level expectations, meeting grade level expectations, and exceeding grade level expectations. And I present this to you because the data that I'm at least analyzed that we get from the state is how well are students doing in level 4 and how well are students doing in level 5. And this is deemed by the state to be that students are college and career ready if they achieved a 4 or a level 5. Okay, so some of that analysis, the percentages there, that's why you're seeing that data, because that's what the data says, the state says to us. Okay, so again, I'm going to be moving pretty quickly here through this, so please stop me. This is a lot of data. I apologize here, seriously. This is the data that the state gives us, and I'm just going to quickly, briefly go through it. I think it's their little PR that they wanted to showcase. they're highlighting, these are state results for the past 3 years in 2015, 16, and 17. In bold is the current last year results. They wanted to show a change that less students are achieving a level 1 and a level 2, which is good news, which is why it's in green, and more students in general are achieving a 4 and a 5, which is why they're in green. You do see some variability, and I apologize for they're off a little bit. You do see, and yes, they do, students on a whole do a little bit better for level 4s and level 5s, but there's not a lot of consistency among it, and you can see in grade 6 there's a little bit of increase from level 1 to level 2, which is not a great thing, and also in Algebra 1, which has some implications for state graduation requirements as well. So this is for mathematics. This is for language arts, similar data. The only one that we see in red is the 11th grade, so there is an increase, and however the state wants to explain that, I'll show you our results in just a minute here. Yes?
Did you move from the mathematics already?
Here's the map.
Okay, so with this, so this is taken what, in May?
This is taken in April, May.
Okay, so at that point in time, they really should be meeting the expectation, right?
Park is they state that the content is 75 to 90% of the way through. So essentially 90% of the curriculum they are testing on.
But the school district kind of should have an idea of what percentage, no? Yes.
Well, we do our best to try to predict what our content is going to be important to them, but also we take a stance of saying we want students to be great problem solvers in math. And that is somewhat taking precedent over saying, we're not teaching to the test of Park, we're teaching skills and problem solving in mathematics that we really want students to carry with them. Most of the content is there. It does get a little bit tricky in 7th grade, where the very last unit is probability that we teach, and so we're infusing that throughout the year, because that's a major area in 7th grade that is showing up on state tests.
And I'm looking at the algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, right? So when we look at those,
So these are not our results. These are the state's.
Oh, okay, good.
This is the state.
Okay, good, because I'm getting worried.
Yep, I'm going to show you our results in just a minute, but the state wanted to show this. Okay. Next up, this is just, again, PR for the state. They wanted to showcase that more students were taking part. This somewhat mimics ours. We did have an increase, but I'll show you those results. We say yay, or they say yay to that, and so they want to showcase that. This is mathematics, so they have 21,000 more students participating in part. Here's the language arts, the number of students tested. We can see there's some decreases in there, but overall there's an increase in there. Okay. So here are our results. This is for mathematics for last year in the Park 2017, throughout the grade levels in grade 3, 4, 5, and the end of core 7 and 8 and the end of course exams. So the chart reads and is not as complicated. These are only 2017 last year's results. So in grade 3, for example, 7% met at level 1, 6% met at level 2. I think you can read the chart as it is. The last 2 columns highlights the differences or summarizes the data for the percentage of students that met or exceeded. So that would be a level 4 or a level 5. And also then it's compared to the state. And so I'll just give a little analysis when you look at the data, because the first thing that popped out to me was grade 8. And in grade 8, we do not fare against the state. It's actually quite low. Even last year when we took a look at the data, we were below the state level. But there are a lot of things working against this grade 8, which I just want to highlight to you. Some of this is, we need to remember that in middle school, we separate students in levels for Math 8 and Math 8 Honors. And Math 8 Honors is Algebra 1. And so those students, we are taking our top level students or our high performing students and taking them out of the Math 8 and putting them into a separate test or a separate class which tests differently. So this grade 8 is not a representation of whole for the whole Math 8 Park assessment. Those students who are performing better are taking the Algebra 1 test. So that's one thing.
Most schools
Most students, and that's why you see the state percentages are a lot lower, because a lot of schools have that pathway as well, right? And the other thing is, this is the same cohort that we've seen year to year that I know I've been reporting on as well, that the students especially in this grade 8, have not shown their true academic ability on state tests. So we see that in NJ Ask when they were taking it. We'll see it again a little bit in the science assessment. But even when they were taking grade 4 NJ Ask, we saw a blip in their performance. And we've always said we've continued to monitor it, and they made some gains, which I can share with you if you'd like. But we know why that was there, and we were expecting it to be low. This one seemed a little bit lower. But we are very happy with where the Algebra 1 performance is, and you can see in the middle school, 71% of the students had a 4 and a 5, and that's a significant gain.
What about the high school?
The high school had 23%, which is why it's bringing down the overall average lower to 42% on a whole.
What's important that they should be higher, right?
The high school?
Yes. Don't you think they should actually be in, or percentage should be in?
Well, keep in mind those grade 8 students who are not a year ahead accelerated, they go into algebra at the high school their freshman year. Okay, so the high-performing students are taking geometry, while the students at academic level.
But what's the percentage of high performance to the number, the class? 10%?
About half.
Is it 50%? Really?
It's about half. It varies from year to year, but we
that-
typically have half the students in algebra 1 in 8th grade and half in math 8th.
Okay, so you're saying for the high school algebra 1, that was 23%, you got 40% is just in the 3s, and 26 was in the 2s, and then you got 11 in the 1s, and this is in April, May, which is almost close to the end of the school year, that the reason that this is low is because the high-performing kids are in a different level?
Not necessarily. This is consistent from year to year that we've seen in algebra 1 performance. You're bringing up an issue as well because the state requirement for meet to graduation requirements for math is to pass algebra 1. And right now in the class of 2018 has to meet a 4 or better on the algebra 1 PARCC assessment for it to count towards high school graduation. And so you're seeing these results. These results are not atypical from other districts that I have also seen from last year, and they are not atypical for the state.
But this is not class 2018, this is class...
This is not, that's correct. And these students, they had to, the students in high school that's reported here, they had to at least take the PARCC exam before they can go to the laundry list, which you'll see at the end of the presentation. The class of 2021, which is the middle school students, they have to pass the PARCC Algebra 1 exam to meet their graduation test.
So right now, because the high school, there's an issue with the number of students taking the PARCC, right? Or is that still?
No, that is not for this year. We had a 100% participation rate in ELA 9 and about 98. I have that data, which I'll show you. Yep.
In high school?
Yeah, I'll show you the data just in a bit. Yep.
For the lower grades, not for like...
For grade 9. For grade 9.
Grade 9.
Yep.
Okay.
And
So
those
like
students are at the high school.
Okay, so grade 9.
Grade
Okay.
9 typically students.
Okay, so grade 9, these students are, so this is the percentage here. So, and you said to me it's low, right? It's not even, is the district level 4, is that for the district, your district is?
This is our district. Yep.
Okay, and the state, and NJ State is 42%, right? Okay, so you consider that, I think the high school is low. Shouldn't you, shouldn't we, what do? You don't do anything, it does make a difference, you say, because they don't have to pass it to graduate?
No, not at all. Testing data has always brought up more questions, which you are asking, than provided answers.
Okay.
So we take this in as feedback.
But-
And I'm going to show
And
you.
Monica, there's some things we're getting into later on, so I don't, Grant's saying like there's some slides we're getting into later on that may answer some of your
Okay.
questions,
Okay.
so.
But
Okay.
you ask about a question of saying, what is this? Yeah, we look at this data and we say, wow, if that's a graduation requirement, we need to have a plan a little bit if that's the way it's going to continue, which Jen's going to talk about.
There's a question about that.
Okay, so they haven't, okay.
Wait, you're jumping ahead.
Okay, so with Algebra 2, though, the numbers look good, I guess. They look better than,
Yeah, that's and
still kind of, I guess with 1, 2s, and 3s, the 1s and 2s to have, that's 36% of your students in April and May, doing that is interesting.
I agree, and that's why it's being presented here. Yeah, absolutely. And that brings the question about why is this test having a level 1s, 2, and 3? I have some data to show you that says, wow, this is a norm a norm reference curved. And so there will students that will be in the level 1, level 2, and level 3. I'm going to show you a graph that it looks like a normal curve.
Like Brent and I pay attention, and we probably get into some really technical conversations that, we could get into some statistics teaching here, but we've been watching the norm curve for this, and there's been some recent research out there about the PARCC testing that they're forcing, what a normal curve is that bell-shaped curve, so that the test itself is forcing some students to be at the lower end. That's what a norm reference test is. And so there's some questions about this is not a criterion reference test, because if they're forcing that bell-shaped curve, you're going to end up with, am I getting a little too much in the statistics lesson? You're going to end up with some kids at this lower level and some kids at the very high level, but few, right? The largest percentage happens in that bell, and they're using a norm referenced bell curve for this, and we've been watching what they're doing with it, and it just brings up some questions if it's really a criterion reference test where all kids could possibly pass, or are they forcing it so it's in the bell curve? Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Any more questions on this?
Yeah, so I know I asked this last year, but do we have, as a district, a target for where we'd like to see our students with
So
respect
can we,
to 4
I want to
and
get
5?
through the PowerPoint. There's some slides at the end that talk about the future of it, Tim. Can we wait until we get to the last couple slides, or?
Sure,
Here's what
sure, I will, but I will note strongly that neither these numbers look good, nor does 50% at meeting or exceeding in high school math look acceptable
Sure.
as a district. But we can talk about it.
But let me, I think what I'd like to do is talk about what the future is of PARCC, because there's some questions about the future of PARCC testing. So I want to talk about that, because if we make some decisions as a district, we'd be making them possibly early when there's some questions about what the next steps will be for PARCC.
And is there a target? Here, we do take it in as feedback for it, and that's what data then presents to us, as saying where do we go, and teachers then look at student performance. We also have reports from PARCC that we can take a look at item analysis to help us decide and determine which PARCC questions were tricky and maybe prepare for that. All right, so the next 2 slides here are comparing year to year from 15 to 16, and I thought this was a better looking slide than the one the state provided. This is comparing not students, but it is comparing simply the tests from year to year. So the blue line has different students as the green line as the purple that you're seeing in there. Okay, the next slide is comparing cohorts. This one is simply comparing tests. When I look at this data, and when we had NJAS data, there's not a lot of consistency that is presented here. And you'll see that in the NJAS results when I'm going to show you that those graphs as well. There are peaks, and you can see in some tests, yes, there's an increase, but for a lot of them, there's a lot of variability in there, and that is also suggestive of what is PARCC actually measuring, how are they doing it, and it makes us question a little bit about the assessment and what we're getting as a result for them versus what they are presenting to us. So, yeah.
The algebra test is going down as 3 tests go, and the geometry, I would think it would be the opposite.
There may be some playing with the cutoff from the state. That's one question. I mean, there's some, just like Grant said, we say this all the time, that, it opens up some questions for us. Why is that happening? Our curriculum has not changed. There is one group of students that we've been watching. Is that, something that's happening, or is the state?
Are they making the test more difficult?
That's another question.
It can also be the case, yeah. Look at how much variability there is with this. Yeah. There's not a straight overall for any one of these graphs of saying, oh yeah, from this year to this year, that's really consistent right there.
It seems relatively consistent, but those 2 stand out.
Yeah, from 6, 7, and 8, and for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, no. I would agree in 3 and 4 we see some slight increase in there. I did even more, some paired sample t-tests of the results, and so for some of them we see a statistical increase in the scaled score, which is great. For other ones, no, there's not a statistical difference between these. Other ones there are. And so there's a lot of variability within the data that's there. And the same thing is presented in this graph. This compared different cohorts from year to year. So this is comparing the same students taking different tests, right? So before we were looking at the test, now we're controlling for students. There's a little bit of consistency, or maybe perhaps a little bit more, but again, you have some peaks and some valleys, and when I show you the NJAS results, you could draw a straight line through those, and we are not seeing that with this. And this is the first year that we were able to see this, especially with 3 years. Last year it was 2, we say, oh, we have a little bit of decrease. This one, it shows itself even more, that again, this is, we're not seeing consistent data from year to year, which makes some of us question of saying, well, why? What is the purpose of this? Why are we getting this? These results are just being the percentage for 4 and 5. That's what I'm showing here. All right, the same graphs are for the English language arts. So here's the same chart. You'll see that language arts actually, on a whole, it has a better, at least for performance, than math does, and that's seen in some of the graphs that I'm going to show you in just a minute. You see the grade 8 is below the state. This is closer to the state level because all of the grade 8 students took this test, versus for math, they did not.
That's true, yeah.
Right? And so we don't see the huge gap between the state and this because we have all students taking grade 8, and you can see that difference in the leveled student.
So, okay, looking at the 9, 10, 11, with the, I guess ELA, you have a high percentage of 11th graders, 25% are 1s, 19 is 2. Those two added together is a pretty high percentage for them to be.
Yeah, so one caveat to the 11th grade assessment is that the state made an allowance for students if they enrolled in an AP level course to be exempt from taking the Part 11th grade test.
Okay.
So that is one that's noted down below in red.
Okay.
The other is the participation rate in 11th grade is not good. And so we're not having a great representation of our students.
It's not the full student body.
Correct.
Again,
That's
it's
it.
our top students are not taking the test in that grade.
Because they've already met
But
the
even if
criteria.
they're the top students, don't you want your students, I'm not looking at if they're top students or not. I mean, people are comparing, well, top students are not taking that, great, fantastic, but the students who are taking it should be passing.
Again, is that the norm referenced, is the state forcing the norm referenced curve so that we'll always have some students at that bottom level?
Because what the state, whatever they end up being, we don't know if that really, what the number is.
So like if you take a class that, Lynn's teaching an English class, she has grades from her students, right? You could force it into say, I want so many D's, so many C's, so many B's, so many A's, right? And you can force the distribution into that. That's a norm reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Criterion reference means I made a rubric, and if you did these certain things, then you meet proficiency. So that's
We're norm
criterion.
referencing against the state pool, right? And so theoretically, the Somerset Hills School District should, based on a norm reference to a state pool,
Yes.
be on the right side of the
Yes,
distribution,
yes.
not the left side of the distribution.
Yes, but what it's doing is statewide, they might be forcing those scores. And when you've got 51%
Right, but our
of people.
performance should always be reflected on the right side, not the left side.
And generally it is, for most of them. That grade 8 is the anomaly in the state.
Right.
So in both of those presented. And again, we haven't seen that cohort of students show their academic abilities on state tests throughout the years. And it's consistent in the PARC test as it was in the NJAS results. So similar graphs to the math examples. Again, it is not consistent from year to year. I see a lot of variability in that data, and it doesn't look like I can draw a lot of trend lines for where this data is going and what to anticipate for next year. This is by test. This is by cohort of students. And we see some increases. That is great. And some of those increases are statistically significant. Others are not.
So, again, I guess I'm just concerned, I have to say, with the high school performance. And I understand what you're saying about the curve, and I understand what you're saying about that, but what other test method do we have to make sure our students are performing at the level that we think they should be performing?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one measure of student academic success,
So we
right?
have
And
We
then,
have APs.
One invalid measure,
thank you.
very new and invalid.
Right.
This is why there was so much in other districts surrounding us, pushback about,
Yeah.
from parents. I mean, you had auditoriums filled with parents saying, what is this? Why are we accepting this? Because this is garbage and it'll be gone next year when Big Man's out. The validity of it is just
I am so
not
angry
proven.
right now that we have put time and money and teachers into this, and this is the garbage we've gotten out of it.
And I'm
It's
so
garbage
excited about
it's
my last
garbage
5 slides.
It's garbage because it doesn't accurately test. What is the garbage
I mean,
nature of
she's
it?
telling you behind you that they're skewing the data. I mean, the test is made by a company who has all of the resources within the school by the same company. They hired people off of Craigslist to read kids' essays. I mean, there was no teacher input in any of these tests. It was like an awful test.
Yep.
You're
Right,
right.
the last
Go
good
talk
test
to
is the
any
GAPA.
educator.
The last good, credible, reliable test, valid test was the GEPA.
Yeah.
And since then, it's become a political
And I am not
football, and none of them are reliable or valid.
I'm not saying state tests are not valid.
Period.
Actually, it's one measure.
Right.
These kids get assessed all day by their teachers.
It's true.
They have,
This is the
they
worst
have good
one.
evidence. This is trash and garbage. And I
That's
am
the worst one.
pissed that we've used
It's the
so
worst
much
one.
money on this garbage, when money could have been going to like better things in our district.
Well, we had to.
No, I know, I'm not saying you guys, I'm saying the damn state.
But this is the worst one, you're correct.
Yeah.
Of everything. I
And you know what,
think
and
so.
here we
It-
are with 3 parents in here screaming about this. Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I have to say, I'm just looking at this, and I understand what you're saying, and you're gonna show more information, because to me, it's a concern if you have high school students who are doing horrible, and they have to go to college, and we know they're getting to college, but don't know that they graduate, or they're flunking out, because they didn't teach them. You know, that's what my concern is, what is happening.
Can we,
So I want those
what
others.
I'd really like to do, I'm just going to try to facilitate this a little bit.
Okay.
Just, can we get through the slides, because he has to report the
He
state
has to do
testing
it.
data.
Okay.
It's a requirement for the state. So let him report that. I have some interesting slides at the end that kind of speak to where is this going, and then we can have a bigger conversation.
Okay.
We're just kind of, he's got to get through this testing. So this is
That's fine.
requirement, so.
Thank you. The state required us to do it.
No, so, all right, here we go. We'll speed through this. So here is the reference to where this data is. On the left-hand side, and I show you a couple different graphs here. The very bottom is the average scale scores for the district, state, and park average, and you can take a look at those. But what I have done is mapped all of those scores into the graph in the top right. That is a normal curve right there.
And so that's why we're making these judgments about this, because we see that in evidenced in the data.
So,
And so have other researchers that have been looking at the
so
test.
D level 4, to get a level 4 is 750. That's about here. Okay? So there are students who will not make that level 4 or above, because look at this data. It's evident that this is a normal curve, how students' distribution worked. The right-hand side shows the distribution of performance levels. Here's the ELA, and I'm going to flip back and forth because it does highlight something interesting, maybe what the state is pushing. So ELA, same results. Here's the math, and you may want to look up here just to see the difference. Math, ELA. Math, ELA. So When I look at this, I see a graph that is much tighter together, not a lot of spread is what the word that we use.
For math.
For math, and in ELA it is. And it is also skewed to the right, which means we had better performance in ELA, because here's the 750 right about here. And so there were a lot more students who were in there, but it's still a normal curve. And that is, it's just more evident to me that how can we judge a little bit about what these performance and these percentages are.
Just one observation, and by the way, thank you for coming.
Was I allowed to?
Thank you for your animation and commitment. No, I'm serious, because
Okay,
it's phenomenal. But just one comment, because we're talking about, bell curves, et cetera. These are statewide bell curves. I would think always in our district, we should always be at the right end of the statewide bell curve.
And we are when you wrap it to the state results. I don't have those.
Right, but I mean, again, the issue is not it's a bell curve. The issue may be with respect to the structure of the test and how it's administered and the time that's wasted or the money that's spent. Get all that stuff. But with respect to a test with a statewide bell curve, I think this district should always be on the right end of it. I think that's what we expect, right?
Yes, and we are, Tim. And that's why those percentages that we see, the 4 and above, we are matching and greater than the state, except in grade 8. Okay, so a little more. Here's I have to report out on subgroups as well. So this is the different subgroup data for level 1, 2, 3. These are for all tests in general, so I'll just highlight what the data is showing to you so you can understand it. So for example, there were 830 valid test scores for students who identify themselves as white for their ethnicity, and then the levels for that. That represents 74.8% of the students in the district. You'll also note that those percentages do not add up to 100% because some students identify themselves as multiple ethnicities. So if you're adding up that data, that is the reason why. On the right-hand side, I just compared last year's data, which is 2016. 2017. We do see some increases for some ethnicities. We are happy, a little bit I was happy to see the Hispanic percentage go up for number 4 and 5, and also our economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities. I think that is something to highlight, that's significant, that change.
So everything went up except the black?
Yeah, there were 14 students of that variability, that sensitive data on there. I have to report out anything that's 10 or more.
And the white, yep, the white and black.
And the white, yep, that's correct.
So there are 14 students, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Here's it for language arts. Again, valid test scores. So we see an increase for language arts for the Hispanic population, which we saw decrease last year. And also for our economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities, we've seen an increase. All right, so here's the number of students tested across the years. I'm highlighting 2017 so you can see it. You can see that there's a number of increased student valid test scores, which is fine, but I'm comparing the participation rate because we have too few students to really say, hey, we had 4 new students take it, but that may be a percentage that's significant. So we saw an increase in all of them, in particular in 8th grade. And in the high school, we had 99% of our students take the Algebra 1 exam, and we think that's because of the state graduation requirement for students to do that, right? And for 8th grade, again, 98%, we have a few students that refused. So this is mathematics, this is language arts. Similar trend, we saw increases in all grade levels. When you're referencing grade 11, we only had about a fourth of the number of students in grade 11 take the exam. So
that's why over the math too, it was like 80 students out of 170.
200, 220. Yeah, about there. So
right, so Monica, that gives you some insight
it's
into what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's what you do, with data is you say, okay, well, what is this? Why is this? Is there something, an anomaly that's making this happen? Is there something that we could do? Is there something that the state did? And there's some of them we don't have answers to.
Now, it's another thing is that, do the kids take it seriously?
Well, that's another question. That's another big question.
Because I know my son likes he does the park because it's a relaxed time. It is.
So when we ask for, and you're questioning some of the levels in there, are students giving their best shot at what their academic performance is? We know from 8th grade that is not a good representation of what they are doing academically in their classes. And so how is that overall? you know, you see third and fourth grade, why do we see an increase? Well, maybe they are young and they want to do those things. So just want to highlight, and I put this in here because this is going to go up on the website and for the public to view tomorrow. These are the score reports that are going to be mailed out to parents starting next week. And so the community can start to see their individual score reports for the student for math and language arts. And I just wanted to highlight in the presentation about what they look like. They are similar to last year, and they give comparisons to how the student did according to the district and state averages, and also breakdowns for reading and writing for their English language arts, and an explanation for some of the common core areas of how well students did. Again, up on the website, there's going to be this will be up there for parents to view, and there's a link to that the state drives them to. Says if you want to learn more, go to understandthescore.org.
So, but the PARC test does what?
We're getting there, we're getting there.
Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to, oh, no, I have science data. Okay, here we go, I'm sorry. So this is the NJS, that consistency. Look at this data right here that's consistent from year to year. You could take one of these and place it in any other year. I can't do that with the PARC exam, right? And that PARC assessment. This is a natural trend line. Yes, there's a little bit of changes here and there, but they are not significant, and we see a percentage here, a 0.2, a 0.8 percentage there, but that's consistent across the board. This is for grade 4, the same thing is for grade 8. Yes, we see a downward trend for grade 8 a little bit, we're seeing that year to year. That could be with the implementation of the next generation science standards. This, for Measurement Incorporated, who implements the NJS, they do give DFG data, our district factor group data, which is why you're seeing it here. And there's a little bit of a spread, and that's because our DFG went up a little bit, and we went down a little bit, so the spread increased from this year to last year. And then here's the end of course biology. Again, all three of these tests, this consistency in the data that we're seeing. There's not a huge spike from year to year. There's not a lot of variability in there, which is something we don't see from the PARC assessment. Okay.
All right, so I know, and I know people are anxious to hear what's going to happen, because this is what we have to say to ourselves: is where are we going with all this? You know, before we make some decisions about changes we need to make or want to make, what is the future of PARC? So, according to the state, 2018, the students will be taking PARC testing in grades 3 through 8, 9 through 12, the end of course tests in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Language arts, it's 3 through 8, and then end of course tests in English 1, 2, and 3. The science, there's a little uncertainty about where the science is going. So because the state moved to the next generation science standards, that old test doesn't meet the current standards. So the kids were tested this year on the old standards, even though we were teaching to the new standards. So that's a question the state is obviously figuring out that they need to do something. Grant put in there for us the quote from the state. I think you just went to a meeting.
Wait there. Room A304. A304, please.
So the state is looking at trying to create before the end of the year a next generation science test. They've just had their first meeting. I'm really questioning. I said to Grant, is this really going to happen? But they would have to do it for 4th, 8th, and a bio or an 11th grade test. I don't know what you got up here. So graduation requirements. So this is where it starts to get controversial, and there's some real questions about the state, right? So 2018, 2019, the students have a more loose requirement, I would call it, for graduation. So they could take the PARC and pass the PARC, which the state, and this to answer your question, Monica, says that the state says, then that's showing proficiency in language arts and mathematics.
So they have to pass all 3 of the PARC.
No. Or they could go through any one of those various pathways. So we have students who just didn't take the PARC, who took AccuPlacer, or who met their requirement through the SATs. And so when we had a lot of refusals, those students knew there was another option for that.
So what is SAT?
there's this cutoff score for the SATs. You have
And
to
that
meet a
is-
cutoff score. Yep, it's up there.
They updated, and I didn't put the update, I just wanted to clarify, because it does change, and I don't want to present the data if someone looks back. So there's a link to the website of where this document comes from. For the SAT, I don't even want to say it because I don't want to be
Why don't you
wrong.
email it to me?
Yeah, I will email it to you, and I'll email you the document too. We have a lot of students who are meeting the graduation requirements through the SAT and the ACT.
What's the ACT should have known?
Huh?
Joe,
The ACT may be 16.
16?
Yes, it's very,
It's low.
it's very,
And I believe the math is either 400 or 440, and I have to look at it.
yes,
Yes.
it's low.
Yes, that's it.
16 ACT?
Yes.
You can't get into college with that, can you?
So,
No, you know what? It's 24. I'm getting the acuplacer wrong. I'm
Okay.
getting confused. It's 24 for
Okay,
math.
I'm getting concerned.
it was still lower than I
It's still
thought.
low.
It's still lower than I thought, you know. So then for graduation, it gets a little tighter for the class of 2020. So for these students, they have to take the PART test, and if they pass it, that can meet their graduation requirement. They have to take it though.
So they can pass any given one, they can do it at night?
Or, let me finish. So, or what they could do is take the PART test, and as long as they took the PART test, even if they didn't pass it, then they have a menu of other options to meet those requirements. Then, for the next, where am I going?
It's right there. So this is the class of 2021, which is
No,
our
it's a-
current freshmen.
Yeah, so the current freshmen have the most stringent
Okay.
requirements. So these are the students that there's a lot of controversy about this. So for these students, they have to take and pass, period.
This is the
In
8th
order-
graders that you guys are talking about.
In order to graduate, they have to take and pass the ELA grade 10 and the Algebra 1, whenever they take Algebra 1, whether it was in 8th grade or 9th grade or even 10th grade. If by chance they don't pass it, there are some ways to do an appeal, but that's not where the state's going. They want those students to take those tests, and they want us to provide remediation if they didn't, so I'll get into that too. I don't know where.
This is the current 8th grade class?
What's
Or
that?
9th grade class?
They're the current 9th
Ninth
graders.
grade, okay.
And
But they're the 8th
it
grade
says
class from this.
all the way down. So to go 2021 and beyond. Is 2021 and beyond.
There's an assembly bill right now, in which I have the code for, that's passed through the House, where they want to do away with the graduation requirement that is suggested for the class of 2021. However, it has sat on the desk and hasn't moved to the Senate. So it is still unclear about what will happen with this. It passed easily through the House. So there's some questions about where we're going. The other thing that's something that we need to consider is that at the beginning of the park, 3 years ago when I was talking about park and doing my piece to all the different HSAs and things like that, I showed the map and I showed how many states, 22 states all across the country were doing park. Almost all the other ones were doing this other competing test called Smarter Balance. And then what you can do is watch what's happening in these other states. So many states have dropped out. We're now at the point where we only are a part of 4 to 5. Now, how they sold park to a lot of us was that we were going to be able to compare state by state data. We can no longer do that because right now we're left with comparing our data to New Mexico, Louisiana, but Louisiana is only sort of using it. Maryland is a strong user.
And do it one.
And so we're left with a promise that didn't really realize. There are a lot of questions, and Grant and I go to these state meetings. They are not giving us clear directives because one of the things that's additionally controversial is that for anybody in that graduation class of 2021, if they didn't pass the Algebra 1 or the English 10, we're to provide them another year. So possibly make the students retake the course, possibly have them have a remediation course, which could be highly expensive to districts, especially if you look at the statewide data, where there are districts that are having at least 50%, even up to 100% of their students needing this remediation. they have not given us directives. I've met with the group, poor Franny, I went through the whole scenario. We're prepared if that is to happen. We have some ideas. We could run a summer class. They've
They're not going to do
hinted.
anything until there's a new governor. So
And
that's
then,
why it's all-
so that's the other thing that we're told often when we ask these questions of the state. The new governor may make another decision. The New Jersey state contract for park is up at the end of this year.
Right.
Will they continue that? Where will this assembly bill go in the future? Where is the graduation requirement? I mean, that's the one that's most immediate and most concerning, because we would have to make a decision soon about how we would deal with some of these students. And then where would we and other districts find the funding for the park remediation? So these are big, big questions. And so Tim and everyone that's been asking lots of questions, we ask those too and say, okay, are there things that we would do to increase these scores? If that was our goal, we could do more test prep. We could be more focused on fluency skills. We could change some of our curriculum that we've embraced deeply. But we have always said we're going to do the best teaching and that we know as to be, the most researched, the best quality, and then let's see where this state testing goes. I don't think, in talking to the HSAs, that people are interested in more test prep. In fact, when I go through the state, the strategic plan input, most parents were saying that they do not want more test prep. That was an overall kind of theme running. So I don't think we're the kind of district that would want to move towards that. That would be the way to get your scores up. But I hesitate to do that when I'm unsure of what's going to happen.
But if nothing happens, let's say if they stayed the course, the 8th grade that you show here that has all of the problems, or the group that will have to pass the park. Is that correct? Right?
So the kids that took algebra this year, whether they were 8th graders, and there were a couple of those that didn't pass the park algebra test, as well as any of the 9th graders last year that took the algebra park and didn't pass, would have to get some sort of remediation. It could be, if they stayed the course, but there's some big, big questions if they're going to stay that course.
But really, you guys are dependent on it not staying the course.
No, we're not.
No, I'm just saying, looking at the data, the 8th grade, and this is not my concern, it's you guys mostly because I'm in Bedminster, and I have to look at our park report, but I'm saying the 8th graders here where they had the most issues are the class that have to pass
So here, let me explain what happens then. So we have to provide, if this went through and the state said we're not changing anything, the new governor said we're not saying anything, the assembly bill never went through, all of those things happened. What we would be prepared to do is we have to provide some remediation for those kids. We don't want to interfere with their college transcripts, which is going to be a big problem for some of them. We would want to provide them maybe a summer class in algebra, maybe some sort of online remedial class. This would also be for the English kids too that didn't pass English 10. And then, if they still don't pass park, they can take the portfolio.
Who assesses that?
So, it's changed over the years. At one point, the portfolio.
It's local, we do, the local school
okay.
districts do.
As long as it's.
But it's
As long as it's
changed.
local, right?
So
Yeah,
it's
It's currently that it is right
So
now.
I can't tell you exactly who will,
But it's
It's
local control.
I mean, I can't predict. It
You
has,
don't know.
some years it has been, I have myself assessed those scores. Some years the state has given us,
So that fluctuate?
Right now, this year, and for the portfolio appeals, there was a lot of local control over it. In the past, there has not been a lot of local control. And so, we don't know is the
Yeah.
question and answer it for the future of it. We can only say what was done, in recent.
exactly.
You had mentioned the reason why so many states jumped into this was because there would be able to be some sort of comparison state by state. Was that not available for the GEPA?
No, because only New Jersey, it's a New Jersey test, the GEPA.
Okay.
That
Which was the best,
before
most
part
badly
testing.
valuable test
Right.
ever.
When you were probably in school, you took the HSPA, right? All the good ones. Those are New
That's why
Jersey
you're on
only
board
tests. And then other states only had their state tests. So one of the things to go to these new tests was that possibly there could be some state-by-state comparison. But, that's a challenge when there's few left.
John, how many schools lost funding for not meeting their numbers?
As far as I know, none.
Nobody, right? Oh, what that was. Oh, those dirty people.
Well, when a new governor comes in, all of the commissioner of education usually changes,
Yep.
as do all the assistant commissioners. So you're looking at a whole new infrastructure when a new governor comes in. So that's why to get worked up right now about all of this really is extremely premature, because very rare, if ever, do they follow the same protocols as, especially if it's a different party coming in. But
What happens when the contract, didn't you
It's
say
up.
the contract
It's
is
up
up?
at the end of this year.
yeah.
So we're not gonna do any testing then, maybe?
No, we're required by
No, we'll do
federal,
it.
there's a
Yeah, but
federal.
That's another,
It'll be one of those nullifiers.
So-
It'll be, we're just using
so
it for data information.
and Grant and I follow this too much, so you tell me when you're starting to glaze over with all the, so the ESEA, which is the Education Secondary, Elementary Secondary Education Act, in it, when NCLB ended, it resorted back to that act. Then there is a requirement in that says that you have to test at the 4th, 8th, and 11th grade level in math, language arts, and science. So that's why they're trying to figure out what to do with that. There could be changes in that act.
That's what they need to go back.
Well, that's what
Why do we
Trump
test
calls it,
every
the
year?
It all sort of things here.
No, ESEA is the act, and then Trump calls it, just like NCLB, he's calling it ESSA. So with the act itself is the elementary secondary. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
This
Yes.
is
So, away from Park, with all its controversies, do we have, or have we had, or have we considered having tests, that internally developed tests that we can essentially measure the progress of our students
That's what
based
we,
on our own
absolutely, and
criteria?
we have those tests. So for instance, in the Teachers College program, we have benchmarks assessments. Those are developed by the Teachers College the Teachers College organization. We use those benchmark assessments to see our students' reading level. We look at that, we look at the growth. We did a whole analysis of it for the merit goals. We really look at those data because we believe that data is directly linked to our curriculum.
So I think that's fantastic. It would be helpful if we had that data presented to the board. I mean, because
Sure.
we obviously are looking at this and saying, for a whole host of reasons which I don't, disagree with, it's flawed, right? It's flawed, and their performance isn't great. Nothing seems to be too terrific about that. But the great thing about numbers is they quantify performance,
Absolutely.
right? You can't just put a guy out on the field and say, I think he ran a better 40 this year than he did last year. You measure it, right?
Sure.
So you need to be able to measure it. So if we have those
Yes,
tests,
and we have those.
let's sort of organize it and then present it and do our own analysis.
So
And
we-
based on our own criteria, here's how our kids are doing, right? And then we know we're ahead, we're behind, what do we need to do? And make it visible for
Yeah.
everyone.
So
Because
that,
Park is the flawed thing that's visible.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the benchmark, the TC benchmark assessment, I think that one is one that some people know well. It's one that we really depend on, that we believe in. We use that data in-house. The teachers make a lot of decisions about individual needs of students from it. They can see what was on the test. They can see the students' answers on the test. The same is true for mathematics benchmarks assessments.
And that's a K through 12?
TC is K to 8.
It's an authentic test.
And I think it would also be, and we want to use high school focus, parochial focus, which makes sense. Interesting to see, over a 3-year period, what the SAT and ACT performance looks
So
like.
we have those two?
It's another
And
objective
you get
measure
that
of
as part of curriculum
performance.
every year, so we can present that here too.
Yeah, I just think looking at
Yep.
data, that's stuff we feel comfortable with. Right? That we say, okay, well, this is data that we think is reasonable,
And our AP
and let's see how we're
scores,
doing.
the other one that we look at closely, the curriculum does
We
a
haven't
huge
done the AP
analysis.
scores yet, have we?
We have not gotten the results yet. So usually it's October when we get all the results. So you get a report every year. The AP test coordinator, Michael Catelli, gives you that report every year as part of curriculum. But, all of this testing data can be available. We can do another testing night if people are really that interested.
Well, unfortunately, the only data that's out there is data that I think objectively people view as flawed and maybe egregiously so. But it's the only thing that's out there. So without anything to counteract it, it doesn't look so good.
So our
But if you have something that
but the other
is
stuff
defensible,
is, so the other
I think
stuff
it's important for the district to understand it
So,
and to be able to look at it year by year.
so let me answer a couple things about that. So some of that data is out there. That's in our college profile. So all of the students in our college profile is up on the website. That includes the AP data.
I'm just saying,
Is
in
that current data? Absolutely.
in a digestible format, so people, look,
And that's-
I'm not suggesting that we're hiding it.
He's
All I'm
saying to
is-
counter it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, all I'm saying is let's have our own snapshot, performance
Yes.
snapshot for the district. That's quantifiable based on measurements that we all agree
and we-
are reasonable.
And that's what so we can look at the college profile that we have up on the web. I think that the reason that this has been a focus is because the news has reported on it. It's gotten some attention from, newspapers. New Jersey Monthly has used the park data to compare. So it's gotten some attention. But attention, like you said, should be brought to maybe the AP scores, the SAT scores.
Let's pull together.
We have all
let's-
that. We have all
I'm not
that.
suggesting we don't, yet again, I'm not suggesting we don't, I'm just saying, I think it would be useful to have it in a structured format that covers a couple of different years, maybe it's 3 years,
Yeah.
and present it in that way, and not say, well, you can look over here, you can look over here, you can look over here, you can look over
So
here. That doesn't work.
So we
Let's
present
have a
that
structured
every year to
report that way.
curriculum. So every year, we present that to curriculum,
Can I-
but we can present it to the full board too.
Right, but as far, and maybe the public hasn't seen it, but it's the board, Tim, as far as the merit goals that we've had recently, all those are in the merit goals that we evaluate every year to show where we are. So that was part of the goals that we set. We had like for the superintendent. So we did have that.
So we can put
We
it
do
all
have those
together.
numbers, it's just that I think it's better to
But you said it's in
make
the
it more
profile.
available.
School profile.
From last year's data.
Last year's data, I don't know, Ellen was working on updating it, I think just last week, so I don't know if they've gotten the scores back from SATs. I know we haven't gotten them for AP yet.
But you should have the SATs, right, because they all.
And no, because they give us information, they provide the information. We can't get individual student scores.
Oh, so they give you like a thing of all of them.
Yes.
And the only reason why PARC is being presented is because I have to present the data within 60 days of this statewide assessment program. That's why we have to present this in this, right? And so
That's true.
That's why we're not reporting on AP, because I'm not mandated to give you AP, and we do it through other means. And maybe that is right. We need to do another
Yeah.
to highlight our.
I would maybe suggest that maybe that should be some kind of a yearly report that's given.
Yeah,
to
and
the
I know
board.
other
So we do a yearly report, I've done the AP and the SAT to curriculum every year, but we can do it to the full board at the same time.
Do it as a full board, put it on the website, put it in the newsletter.
Well, you won't get the data at this time.
Well, whatever, when we get it, and we put things together, but I do think, I agree, I think it would be good to have a snapshot, and also, with the skills, it would be good if, because we have 3 years worth of those merit goals, and I think, because they were stringent, and they showed you exactly where we were, and how the kids fell, and that our staff.
And we focused on one grade at each, but we have the data for all those
Yeah.
grades.
So I think that everybody would benefit from seeing that.
Kind of like a dashboard, Jen, like a testing dashboard or something.
So that is part of our college profile, so you can see some of that. So we have some, and I do it to curriculum. I don't know who's been on curriculum last year, but I do it it's whenever we get the scores in, it's the next month. So
This is 2016.
yeah.
The majority, I would say the majority of everyone's concern is where do we fall in the industry standard in terms of academia. It's very hard to quantify, but it is possible.
It depends on which test you want to look at.
Exactly.
I mean, it
But
depends on, what kind of question you ask. Is
Right.
it AP? Do you compare school to school by AP scores? Do you compare it by SATs? Do you
My
compare it by
largest
college?
My largest concern is actually that we're very advanced and we're focused on that top 50%. We always have that AP data in front of us saying how we really have stellar students. But my concern is, are we really grooming those people that fall within the bottom 50 or really just average students?
And that was part of the merit goals.
Right.
We had to get everybody, for me to get a merit, for me to achieve my merit goals, we had to hit like over 80% of our kids had to be at that goal, which was stringent. It wasn't allowed to be anything less.
And if you look at the PARC data, we did have some movement in those areas.
Yeah.
But outside of the park data, like we're saying internally, if there's more really broken down by that bottom tier, so we have
Yeah, we have it by
something,
individual student.
not just 50% here, 50% there, something in between, more tiered stuff.
But the SAT, most and ACT, most of the kids take that, right? Majority of the, a percentage, you guys would know what percentage of the student body took
Yep,
it.
that's in the report.
So Jamie,
Oh, sorry.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
People are always concerned about how our students are doing compared to other districts. So in terms of those ACT and SAT scores, we probably don't have access to other.
We'd have to ask them for their data.
Oh, would you give yours if somebody asked?
They may publish it.
A lot of students publish it though.
They may publish it the same way that we publish it through the school profiles.
Oh,
Now,
I see. You have to
over
look for it.
600
Yeah.
school districts
Yeah.
and finding every detail.
Because that's how you want to know, right? How are we versus Madison, or how are we versus?
So the AP, for instance, let's take that, we know what the score should be, to be able to get credit for that, and then you can weigh against that, and that's a strong criteria.
Right.
That gives you a lot of information.
And the AP gives us the state, and I don't know if the SAT, but not school to school.
But as Sarah said, the AP is only for the top tier, so the ACT and SAT would be more for everybody, or more big, not everybody.
Well, also, that's just at the high school level then too, so I know you guys were mentioning that you have data for K through 8,
Yep.
so that'll be able to fill in some pieces.
I would love to present that to you.
I was going to say, just a suggestion, we were talking about the dashboard and just something to further on that point. I'm just wondering if within curriculum, they can't come up with a template, like a metrics dashboard, and then we decide what we want to measure, who we're going to compare it to, and then we just use that dashboard consistently over the next.
Can we compare it to like another district, you mean?
Or whatever, because I think people are throwing out all different ideas of things to measure and who to compare it against. Let's agree on a template, and those will be the key elements that we'll focus on and continue to monitor. Because if we keep changing the variables and what we're looking at and what we want to compare to, we'll never really get as accurate as last
You know
year.
what's so funny about that is that years ago, back when they had the real tests, the ones that weren't flawed, they had the district factor grouping. So it was very
That's why I was
easy, which was the
always
whole,
looked at
one of the purposes of testing was so that you could see not where you fell with necessarily with the state, but where you fell with your district factor grouping. So you could very clearly see where you were, where they were, but the state did away with the district factor groupings because they don't want to use that anymore. So now here we are, but it speaks to exactly what you're talking about. So we'll have to try to, share with the other people and measure ourselves, but that used to be able to just click on it and see where you fell, because that is how all of us measured ourselves in those groupings. We thought, oh God, we better be ahead of so-and-so, and now they did away with it. So it's just one more step that we have to try to figure out in order to see where we really fall. But I think that it's good that we're talking about this stuff because, like Tim said, it's the only data out there. However, we always find ourselves defending bad scores. And the reason that we're defending them is because we can't get a handle on what kind of test is it. It's not really valid. Not everybody has to take it. Not everybody cares, even if they are taking it. So to be judged on it is really ridiculous. But yet, what are we going to use? So the ideas that we're talking about now, I think, are all very good ideas that we can put together because we do need to measure ourselves and show the public and show each other where we fall, where our needs are, and what we have to do to get better.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's tremendous validity to that dashboard because it helps us to measure how we're doing, right? Like Ed Koch used to say, how am I doing? So you want to be able to measure how we're doing. And then we also want to be able to communicate and market how we're doing into the economy. And people are coming in and looking at houses, and you want them to know how we're doing, right? And you really, we know we've got some phenomenal teachers, amazing teachers, amazing programs. There's so much goodness. We've got the Jack Broderick standing up there, the Broadway star. I mean, there's so much goodness here that we need to do a better job of bringing the information together and communicating that message. in a vacuum, people go to this, and they pull up the article, and they shoot it around, and all of a sudden, people are looking at houses, and they're like, you know what, this is not looking so good. But that's not what we have here. That's not what the school is all about. That's not what this district is all about. So we should do our best to, yes, measure with measurements that work, that we believe in, and then communicate it. Share it so we can manage, to help oversee, and share it so we can market the good stuff that we've got going on in the school district.
And one of the obstacles that the state is still struggling with, and I think anybody's struggling with, is the tests are often about language arts and math. All the tests we've named, they're all about language arts and math. They're still struggling with, they use SGOs in the state to assess social studies, science, all the other things we teach, and there's many, many other things. I also make sure that, we care about all of these different areas and that we don't get overly focused just on language arts and math, because those are the kinds of assessments that are out there. I think they're the ones that we as a culture have figured out to assess and compare, but we've got lots of other areas that we haven't really figured out yet how to assess and compare them. So it's a challenge, and the state, no one has figured out how to do that. Right now they use SGOs, the student growth objectives, that the teachers set themselves for that. But that, it's individual, and it's an individual class decision. Any last questions, comments about the park?
Just a technical question on these graphs. How many of these graphs in this presentation did you personally make up, and how many are from the state? Because they're not all consistent in terms of size and dimension and all that. And usually when I look at graphs and comparisons, it's helpful if they're...
Everything is from me, except for the few slides above, which is from the state.
Because the only ones that seemed to be consistent was when you're comparing the math and ELA, when you went back and forth. Otherwise, different colors, different size, different dimensions. It's a little confusing, so.
My apologies.
It'd be helpful if they were all consistent, for me anyway.
Yeah. No, and everyone has their interpretation of what data is.
Well, because they look different. If you can, you spread them out differently, or you shrink them, or
Yep.
Well,
the
that's
gap
why
is
the
like this one
numbers-
here, the gap is different than the other
Right, and
one.
that's why the numbers are there at the bottom, that you can do the actual
I get that, but
number
it's still-
comparison.
Perception is, so you
You want the same
depending on
colors,
how the graph is broken down, it could look totally different. You can give a different impression of it.
Yeah.
For me, I would just like to see.
I
Same colors.
I tried to make it at least the scales the same, so they are going from 0 to 100.
But again, you're every 10 distribution from 0 to 100% is different than.
Absolutely correct, and I can change that and update it for the
I
website.
mean, I don't know if it matters to anyone else, but just be.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like that one. Kid in front.
They're not the right events.
Thank you very much.
But thank you.
He does, Grant does a lot of work and analysis.
No cut and paste, there's a lot of hours that goes into it.
Yes.
No, I've got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point in the agenda, we're at the public questions and comments. We very much welcome input from the public. Public comments are welcome at this time on any agenda item. Towards the end of the meeting, there will be a second public forum on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, but an individual may speak a second time after all those who wish to speak on a topic have been heard. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as questions and answers sessions, but are offered opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels that there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with all New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. Public questions and comments will be limited to 30 minutes. And thank you for your input. So if anyone has a question on an agenda item, please come up to the podium, state your name and address, please. Seeing none, we'll go on to, oh, I'm sorry, we have one more report.
I forgot to give the district enrollment at the beginning of the year. So the Bedwell School has 570 students as of today. They ended the year with 597, so they're down a little bit. The middle school has 524. They were at 542. The high school has 857. And they were at 828 at the end of the school year. So overall, our district enrollment is 1,951 students, which is down 16 students as of today from the end of last year.
The high school went up though, right?
Yes.
Can you tell if it is that, did the administrator go up?
I was afraid to ask that.
Are you okay?
Yeah, you know. I'm just teasing, I don't know, they don't have a break.
They don't have, okay, I was wondering.
Yeah, I know, I should have thought ahead, I didn't.
Can I get that?
Yeah, I said I was ready for tomorrow.
But the actual numbers that are.
It's down.
But I mean, the actual certified number to the state is October.
Yeah, October 15th
Is October
is the day.
15th is the day that you certify what the actual enrollments
Right.
are.
For purposes of funding.
But 828 to 857.
Okay,
It's not yours,
okay, next would be approval of minutes. Can I have a motion for approval of the August 23rd? Motion second? Second, Kathy. Questions or comments?
Just want to point, my apologies for not being at the last meeting. I just want to point out that for years in finance, I have been asking for cuts and consolidations wherever possible. Very often I've been told we can't cut, we can't consolidate, we can't, and there was an example of this happening, and I appreciate that, and I just want to say it publicly.
Great.
It can be done.
Any other comments and questions? I think Bob's not here for finance, but I think some of that change was made also because of somebody leaving. So I think that the board should look at ways to reduce that when the opportunity appears. So
Not just when somebody's leaving,
Right,
but
but-
it's necessary and when.
Right.
We're going to be faced with a lot of financial constraints, and I think we need, that's why we're here, we're elected, because there are difficult decisions, and I think, but for many years, I was told, no, 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 and there were a lot of
See, we waited till you weren't
opportunities.
here, and then did it. We waited till you weren't here, and then did it.
Looks like.
But that is, that's what happens when you're the retiring superintendent. But on a serious note, we did look at it and take the opportunity to do that, and that is a substantial savings. Not only, I think it's 68,000 a year, but should be, hopefully will be ongoing, so it's not just a one-time cost.
Again,
So yes,
and I'm
point
accused by my wife
Yeah.
on a regular basis of repeating myself, but I've
Yeah.
been pounding away at this, that it can be done, and it wasn't August 23rd, it finally could be done, it most likely could, we could have found ways, so I'm happy that it's been done, and I just want to make a note of that, so that people know that we are looking at ways, and hopefully we will continue this. Not to cut it, I'm just saying where we can streamline and consolidate, I think we need to do
more
that.
efficiencies.
Yeah, because it's only going to get worse, the financial situation.
And the minister was, I don't know if I just addressed the issue that we had last time, you guys asked me about the person doing the audit.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys, I mentioned to you after, but it wasn't part of the documentation, that we had Ron Belandi to doing it, and I did look through the documentation that was sent to you, Fran, Lou, and to Nancy, and it actually stated in there that he was.
But that's not an audit, he's just requesting information.
Okay, well, in there, it actually told you he was getting the information before the start the audit, so, because I mentioned it to you guys, I mentioned that's the person, and also it was in the documentation that they sent to you.
Yeah, but I think the question was, and correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't that, it was, well, that came a little like later.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying it now, so we have it on record.
Yeah, and that,
It was.
yeah, but I mean, it came later, like, from when we had requested it from Bedminster, but it came, and then when it came, the question was, is he an auditor? That was more, well, they both were concerns, was the timing, when they were gonna let us know, because, obviously we have to get documents ready, and secondly, was he an auditor, were they having their, auditor?
Yeah, I think he actually requested information
Yeah, he did.
already, so you guys
Right.
have that from you.
Yeah, Nancy
Right.
sent,
Okay, good.
right, yes, yeah.
And is there some, he could not do the audit because there's something that said he's not an auditor? I emailed the board, maybe I
Well, we
went to
don't,
the wrong.
If he's not an auditor, then the position of Somerset Hills would be that we're not necessarily going to agree with his findings because he's not an auditor.
This is a certified BA though, right?
Yes, but not an auditor, and we believe he has conflict of interest since he was your former interim superintendent.
He was, that's correct.
I know.
Yeah.
Who also felt that we did not bill Bedminster correctly. So our position is that that is not someone who is objective and independent auditor.
And that's what, I think what we're gonna do is, because numbers don't lie. So what we were gonna do is actually have him go through the numbers and go through things, because you can tell by looking at numbers, something's not right, you can see it
Right.
with numbers. Numbers are really great, that's why I love them. He's gonna go through the information, the data, and then we might, I don't know, I'll make sure there's somebody else is gonna look at it. But the numbers are numbers, right?
No, but that's not how it was, that's not what we were contesting. What we were contesting is Bedminster told us they were going to do an audit, which implies auditor.
Okay.
And Ron's not an auditor, so that's where we were, and we didn't have any communication from Bedminster.
Okay.
So even though we reached out several times, we wanted to know who was going to do it and when it was going to be done so that we could be prepared.
Yeah, and I was just saying that, they did say that in the documentation that was sent to you guys, because I went back and,
Late.
no, before we had the meeting, before our meeting.
Before our August 23rd
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, it was in that, because I looked at the
But we've
documentation
been
that you
asking
answered.
since the spring.
Oh, okay, but they did send it to you before our meeting, because when I said it, you guys were like, well, who is it? And I was surprised, because I went back and we got the documentation, I looked it up, there was names, so it was there. And I was thinking, what's going on?
Well, I think there's a lot of communication issues
Okay.
as well as other.
So if that's an issue, I'll make sure I put that down.
I also think we were asking who the auditor was, and since he's not an auditor.
Right,
I mean,
that's
there's
where,
no name of a
it
real
was said
auditor.
he was a consultant, so
Right,
it was.
that's what they were asking.
I think the question was, there were two questions, because we
Right.
noticed in your minutes that you had approved the auditors for $10,000, and then you approved him also as a consultant.
Right.
So our question was, who's going to do the audit, and
Who's gonna look at the data he's collecting?
right, he's doing it as a consultant, not as an auditor, because that's the way it was approved in your minutes. I believe he was approved as a consultant.
Right.
So is he consulting for you, or are you expecting him to do the audit for you? Because our position is that if you're going to contest our numbers, then it has to be done by an auditor. And that's our position. So if he's just collecting information with his Oprah request for numbers, and you want to look at those numbers and see if they fall on the correct lines, that's one thing. But if you want to audit our numbers and say that these are incorrect, you have to have your auditor come in and say that these are on the wrong lines and these are incorrect.
Okay,
That's
So-
my position, and I think that's the legal, I think that would be.
That's a legal
I think
No,
that.
that would be the board's
that would be-
position for
that's-
Somerset
that's-
Hills.
that's-
Oh, that's the board, because I did make, I always put emails out to find out, if we're in the wrong place. I didn't get anything back that's saying that that was incorrect what we were doing, so I just wanted to make sure,
No,
that
it's
somebody,
not-
I could email at the school
it's
board to
not
make sure.
incorrect.
We were just
for-
telling you our
for-
position.
Oh, it's your position, okay, because
It's not
I
incorrect
did
for-
email, like, okay, I got a different answer, and they said it's okay, so, but it's your position,
Our
okay.
position.
It's
Okay.
not incorrect for Ron to request that information,
Okay.
okay?
But it's the board's
But
position
it
here
would be
that
our board's
is.
position that if you're gonna contest the numbers, that it has to be an independent auditor to audit the information.
Or we can get another independent auditor to review the numbers,
That's-
or maybe go to the county or something
You
like that.
can look at those numbers and think that they might be wrong or right when you get that information. But if you think that they're wrong, you can't come to us and say, we're not gonna pay the tuition because those numbers are wrong. Because we're not gonna accept that. We're gonna accept an audit firm, an independent auditor to come in and tell us that those numbers are wrong.
Or we can
That's
go
where they-
take it to the county or
So
the
point of
state.
order, we had a
The county's
motion
not
and a
gonna
second
get
on
involved.
the
They're not getting involved in that level?
This is,
not
well,
discussion on the minutes.
that was, well, I think it was in the minutes.
It was in the minutes, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah,
Yep,
and
in the
outside
minutes,
in the
that's why I brought it
minutes.
up.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Baker? Nope, I'm sorry. Mr. DeGino?
Abstain.
Mrs. Hoppy, not here. Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Ms. Sui?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Okay, next is finance. Bob is not here, so I will give a finance report. We did not have a meeting since our last meeting, but we do have motions 1 through 9, but we also would like to have a walk-on motion that we discussed in executive regarding the contract for the search for the new superintendent. So I'd like to add that as number 10.
I'll read number 10. Number 10 would be resolved that the Somerset Hills Board of Education approve a contract with New Jersey School Boards Association to conduct the superintendent search for a fee of $12,500. That would be number 10.
And so I'd like to make a motion for those 1 through 10.
Second.
Jamie had her hand up first, sorry.
Whichever.
Is there any questions or comments on any of the finance motions?
I have one. Number 3 is approve budget transfers, and I had some difficulty with my paperwork, I spilled coffee on it. So I was just trying to look again, what the budget transfers, could you tell me what page it's on?
I have to get my book.
Excuse me?
I have to get my book.
Okay.
It should say current appropriation adjustments is the long-term for transfers.
Okay.
It should be following, generally either right before or right after the board secretary report, but let me look in the.
Did you find it? Under appropriations?
Does it say appropriations?
What page is it? Oh, it's not the page.
No, that's not
Because
it.
in,
Let's see what you look at.
Because you gave us another little set of the finance stuff, so that was nice.
Okay, it's expense account adjustment analysis by adjustment number. And it's page 1, it follows the report in the packet that looks like it's, that is the board secretary's report.
Okay, so you're saying on page 1 is the budget transfers of
Yeah.
that packet?
Yeah, this is what it looks like.
Okay.
Expense account adjustment numbers. So it follows that, you talking about what I just handed out tonight?
Okay, that's what I was looking at.
In the book that, what I handed out tonight, should be, yeah, it should be the last page. Oh, no, that's the check register. Should be the last page of what I handed out tonight is the transfers for August.
So it looks like, it says expense account adjustment by adjustment number.
Okay.
And in the packet, it follows what's.
All these
Board
transfers right here.
Secretary.
Okay, so page 1, the last one you're talking about. Okay, so that was one question. Another one I actually had on them, so I got totally confused. On page 1, yeah, I just looked at that. Of this packet, it's this one that was nicely here. One, and I was just, I think I asked it before, but I just was going to get that together. Just looking at the assets that we had, the number, because I had asked about how much money we had left over from last, and I remember it was like 1.2 million. And we had talked about that, we said something about we were going to, you transfer money out into the different accounts, and I thought that would be done in September of that. That's not when it happens. Like the maintenance and capital reserve, do you put money in those accounts from the extra money that was left over from last year?
I think you asked the question, if the leftover reserve, if we appropriated that into that capital reserve, and we did not. So the money that was left over from the budget from 16-17 is exactly where it was at the end of the year. It all rolls into fund balance. We did not appropriate any to capital reserve or maintenance reserve or anything like that.
Now, so those accounts for the 16-17 year, there was no money put into those accounts? So those accounts did not change?
No, correct.
Okay, so you never put anything in those accounts?
I did not put anything into capital reserve or maintenance reserve from leftover funds. I think that's what you're asking.
I'm asking did you put any money, period, from any
With
part?
$250,000, but that was budgeted at the beginning of the year.
And so the $250,000 was
It's
put into...
actually budgeted, it's not taken from anything, it's a budgeted appropriation.
It was budgeted from the beginning of the year, and it was put into what account?
Capital reserve.
Capital reserve. Okay, so that is the only amount of funds that was put into a reserve account last year was $250. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the assets, well, we have the 153, 154, which is others. What is that? I just was a bit confused. What is that? Because I can tell, like cash in the bank, a capital reserve account. I just didn't understand what that one was.
What's the title of the account?
It is it's on that first page, number 1, and I don't know if I asked this again. It's number 1, it says assets, and you have resources, and in the assets section, you have 101, and at the bottom, there's 153 and 154, it says other. It says net of estimate uncollectible or blah, 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 and then it has like, and that was, and this $1,685,763. Yeah, what is that again?
I'm not sure at this moment. That's for August. I don't know. I'll have to look into it and let you know. I think it looks like it's an accumulation of all of the accounts receivable from the state. I think, as I'm looking at it now, it looks like the total of all of those numbers to the left. So it's the interfund. Yeah, it's the interfund, which is just due from another fund, like in capital.
So it's all of these that, and you just roll them into this other numbers such as, okay.
That looks like a total, yeah. The biggest portion of that is the state aid due from the state.
Okay.
At $1,508,641.
So state aid is usually paid at the beginning of the year, they pay it sometime?
No, it's paid once a month.
Oh, once a month? Oh, that's good. Okay.
Quick question, the hockey program, the tryout, can I ask is our contribution to that now
So this,
equal to the others? Remember last year we worked with co-op.
So I'll give you the information I have here. Middlesex High School has agreed to join Somerville and Bernards High for this tryout, rather than calling it a co-op, it's a tryout. It gives the program much needed revenue shot. This is from my copy.
It doesn't say what.
It doesn't say about the contribution.
But we had determined a contribution.
Yeah, it will be, I did also speak to Mike about it. So
My question was from-
It'll be reduced,
It's going to be, should be,
yes.
last year, it wasn't proportional. We were paying more than, I
And we
think.
already told them we weren't going to pay any, we were going to only pay amount
Schools are paying
equivalent.
proportionally what
That's
our
the plan.
representation is.
Yes.
I think that's what we need
Yeah,
to do.
yeah, I think we came up with an amount. And I
Right,
said-
we did.
But that was before it was a tryout. This is the first I've seen a tryout.
Yeah, he just said it.
This is a new thing where he was
So-
able to bring Middlesex in, so that will even further spread the costs out over
So-
a greater number of
My
students.
point is, and I will vote on this, yes, but I want to make sure
Let me ask
that
Mike what the contribution is.
it's proportionate to what our
But that was
representation
already
is.
established.
Yes.
It is.
But I thought it was, that was reduced to 10,000.
I thought 10,000 sticks in my mind.
Yeah, but I
couldn't
thought,
remember for
but I
sure.
thought Somerville was paying more though.
I think they
With,
were.
after the 10,000, we said we just gonna pay 10,000.
Right.
If it's now 3 teams, it should be less than that. I don't want to be paying 10,000 if there's 3 teams and we're paying 20,000 overall, then we're paying half, but we represent a third.
Well, we have to check because this literally, when did this, he just sent this to us, so
Okay.
why don't we?
We could table it or we could vote on it, but I
Maybe we should
Yeah,
table it.
He asked that we not table it
Yeah.
because it will hold up a lot of
Yeah.
things. I can tell you that I had a conversation with him, and it will reduce our contribution because there will be more students sharing the cost, and there'll be an additional school district sharing the cost. I don't know what the amount is, because I didn't go over that with him, but it'll be less than it was before.
Can we,
Help me though. My,
can we vote on it with contingency that if it's less, then we,
That's no more than the amount
It needs
that
to
we
be
agreed to.
proportionate to the number of players represented by all 3 teams.
so we can
What-
decide contingency.
Based on the total amount,
That's the
the
plan.
total cost to run the program. Total cost to run the program is 30,000, and we each have 10 players on the team, then yes, we would pay 10,000, but,
I understand what you're saying, and yes, that's the intention.
okay.
Yeah, but I thought, I just remember that we had less than, that we were just paying 10,000, we had less. So it may not reduce it because, because we still may just have that number that goes.
Yeah, that number 10,000 is out the window, because
Well,
it
whatever-
doesn't exist anymore. Now, because there's 3 teams now, and I don't know how many players, Tim, you may know, because you're involved in hockey, I don't know if we have more players that signed up, fewer players.
Well, it doesn't really matter what it is, we have a built-in contingency, we can vote on it based on that. I think, is everyone fine with that?
I'm fine with it, yeah.
Can we-
What'd you say?
I said, it doesn't really matter whether it's more or less than this number, as long as we vote on it with that built-in contingency, then,
It's
as long as
proportionate to
everyone's okay with it.
number of
we're
The
players.
cost is proportionate to that,
To the
our
number
cost
of-
is proportionate to the number of
Right.
plans. Yes, we could modify, but if it's okay with the mover and the seconder, we can just modify it.
I'm okay as the mover and the seconder shaking their head.
But are we changing what we voted on last time by saying that now?
It's all changed anyway, because now there's another team.
Because it wasn't
So
3
what we
teams,
voted on
wasn't
is
3
changed.
teams at the time when we voted on it. It was
And
only
we can hold
Somerset
them up,
and Somerset Hills.
This is just approving the joining of it. It doesn't say anything about the finance yet, right? This is a result that somebody said, or approve joining a tribe. That doesn't say anything about the finance component of it, so we shouldn't add
We
it.
don't know the finance component, but
And I'm saying we shouldn't probably add it into this, we should just join
certainly
it.
what Nancy's
Well, then
saying
it
might
should have been under
needs us to
finance.
move quickly on it.
You're right.
It should have been under curriculum then. So if it's under finance, there's a financial obligation to
That they're
this
not putting here.
motion that's not on here. If it was just approving that we do that, that would have been under curriculum as we're approving,
But-
as a,
Can we move that?
okay to do that. Move it to curriculum,
And just approve
and then just
the tryout.
Approve every other line.
Just approve the
that,
joining.
and then get the finance part of it on the next,
On the next agenda.
meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Does that,
I think that works.
yeah.
Okay, that's good.
okay? And then
We'll make it
if the
number 7.
finance doesn't work out, then they can just pull out of the program.
So make it curriculum number 4.
Yeah,
I'm just
look at me
talking.
for all that stuff, yeah.
I'm just talking here.
I know,
Somebody
right?
shake their head.
Unless we have more students, we might have anybody else.
Okay, we're gonna, as a motioner, and hopefully the seconder will agree, we'll move that motion to curriculum. of curriculum, you have another one to add when you do your curriculum report.
You can talk about that hockey.
Any other?
Second across, Janice.
And then we're going to ask you how
Greg's teed up for a good question.
Janice, if it's good lunch.
Is there any other questions on finance? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, please.
Mr. DeGiorgio?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Ms. Sui?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Next is curriculum with a new motion.
No pressure.
Okay, the curriculum committee had a meeting on September 12th. Gretchen Dempsey, middle school principal, attended, and the committee reviewed, let me turn this on. The committee reviewed the progress of the new two-year Ahead Math pathway for uniquely talented students at our middle school. At this juncture, the program is progressing accordingly, and we will continue to monitor and assess the program. Our group also reviewed the state testing results, which Grant Colmer presented at the curriculum committee meeting, and which the full board saw here tonight. Next, we reviewed the new district mission statement created during the strategic planning process. This mission statement is in your attachments, and it says, "The mission of the Somerset Hills School District is to provide an authentic and balanced learning experience for each student by harnessing the power of innovation and an engaged community to create thoughtful and impactful global citizens." The committee also approved a homeschooler wishing to join extracurricular activities and the creation of an alumni directory. Lastly, we reviewed the field trip request, which will be voted on by the full board tonight. So, I would like to move items 1, 3 plus number 3 on the addendum, and number 4, the hockey that we just discussed. Any questions?
Second.
Call for a second.
Okay. Jamie, any questions or comments?
Questions, and I really should not be questioning because I'm actually on the curriculum, but I did not make them. I'm sorry, because I really should be. But the objectives, you say that the innovation, whatever that you just said, that's not on here, right? That we're not approving. Are we?
It's, you're talking about the mission statement.
Yes, yes.
It's under facilities. If you look under the facilities.
Oh, it's under facilities.
Yeah, I have it as a facilities motion. And if you look in the facilities packet, there's the mission statement.
It's under facilities.
Yes.
When that was voted on by the strategic plan group, that's not, that was what the community voted on.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was created during the strategic plan. Groups broke out, some of the people in the room were on this, and we created different mission statements. The whole group then came together and voted, and this was the one that was voted on.
So we don't take the mission statement and try to break it down for the school district and making sure that the objectives, everything wrap into the mission statement.
This was through the strategic planning process, so this was the process that the board agreed on.
The task was to revamp our mission statement because it was too lengthy and too many words. So the whole room broke out.
So I was the wording, which is nice, I like it, but I always look at, because one of the things we do with our mission statement, we try to break it down and we apply it to the goals. So if you have a mission statement, you want to make sure it's a goals. And when you say innovation and some other things, you want to look and make sure.
So I think maybe you're talking about next month, which you're going to see the whole strategic plan, goals and objectives and activities.
That roll up to the mission statement.
Yes, so this is just the mission statement.
And then also the financial cost to do that will be in all that.
No.
Not at this point.
Not at this point. So right now, you're deciding the next meeting, you're going to decide if these are the activities you want to support.
Tonight, we're going to approve the mission statement under facilities. Okay, we'll have that as a motion if the board agrees to the mission statement. Next month, there'll be a presentation of the outcome of the strategic plan, of the goals that were established by the strategic plan. If the board adopts or approves those goals, then you can do the first year, second year, third year, and put the monetary values in
And then we
based on those goals.
And then we approve those.
And
We
then-
approve
and then
those
you approve
separate.
those separate,
Okay,
yes.
because when,
Yes.
I like the innovation,
Yes.
innovation is very, general, and it's
Right.
great to do it, but yeah, sometimes you have to watch some things you approve because of the fact that if it filters down, when you
Right.
approve something that filters down, that might cost more. You always
Right.
have to look at those
The
things.
board will approve what the goals are, and then follow up to that finance center, or however it will be established. We'll have, if it's a 5-year goal, 5-year plan, 3-year plan, you'll assess what can be done in the first year, second year, third year. There might be some no cost
Okay,
no cost based on what the goal is. It might be just changing something within the building,
okay.
or the way the program is done. There might be some cost if you're gonna have to buy equipment, and then those will all be listed,
Something we just
first
do
year,
separate.
second year, third
Okay.
year, and that will come back, and you need to prove what the amounts are for
Okay.
those.
But we do hope that innovation trickles down from the mission statement into the school system.
Yes, and we always do, just that sometimes innovation is costly.
I have a question about ice time, Janice. Just kidding.
How much you like to-
Have you settled on helmets?
I'm sure I did, yeah.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll do the roll call. Mr. DiGiacchino? Yes. Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Ms. Sui?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Mrs. Virtue?
Yes.
Mrs. Birch?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer, yes. Okay, next is facilities. And facilities did have a meeting earlier today. What we did do, we looked at a long-range facility plan. We have a proposal from we requested a proposal from the architect to put together for the board a long-range facilities plan, which we would like to go through all the buildings and come up with a comprehensive list of things that need to be done to the district as far as roof replacements, any kind of repairs that are going to need to be done, so we can have some kind of a long-range planning proposal or investigation of the district, so that we can then use that as a budget tool when we go into the budget seasons for the next few years. If we know that the roofs need to be replaced or repaired, or the windows need to be repaired, or there's leaks that are coming in, and the walls are going to have to be done in the open part of this high school building, things like that. We're going to do a comprehensive investigation of all our facilities and make sure we know what kind of repairs are going to need to be done in the next 5 years, and then we'll know what to budget for. So you'll see that if the board is okay with us doing that, we will have that as a motion on the next meeting for the amount. I think it was it $12,000, I believe it was. Was it $12,000 for the architect, for the proposal?
No, it's,
3,600. All right, I don't know where I got 3,600
from, you got that from the school board's contract.
I got that from the school boys, I'm sorry, mixing contracts up.
$3,600.
$3,600 for the architect to come in and do
Is it under facilities?
It's not on here. We're going to have it for next.
Okay.
Well, if the board is in agreement that we should do that, have our architects come in and do a comprehensive 5-year plan for us, so that we can budget for the next 5 years of the thing. We just want to make sure we're on top of things that have to be done, so that we don't get caught in the middle of the year with major projects.
Are they going to actually also, because we had that issue with our roof at Minster, and we was like, we have to replace it, we have to replace it. It was like this big looming thing over our head. And then we brought somebody in, and they ended up doing something totally different. And I don't remember what they did, but they did something that cost less. So it was like an alternative we did that cost less, and that's all I know, because I'm not on facilities.
Okay.
So it might be something to look into, in case that is something that happens, instead you have to pay in all this money, you can do whatever that was that cost less, that
Right, and I think that's kind of what,
I must say, during the meeting, if you don't mind me interjecting.
sure, no,
But we are trying to take the most conservative approach possible for our capital expenditures, and we are keeping that in mind. We're actually proposing different materials, whether to replace or just to patch certain items, and what's the best material at the lowest cost on a pro forma basis. So we're very conscientious regarding that. That's a great point.
Have we had an architect like this come in the past to do that sort of thing?
Not in 16 years. But it is supposed to be done, because the state went through a lot of different...
Well, I know that, but I mean, it's supposed to be done that you get somebody to come in?
It's supposed to be done that you have a long-range facility plan. So
okay.
we were talking about doing it because, one of the reasons is because, so for continuity, that you have a document to refer to.
No, I get that. I just didn't know if you had people come in frequently.
We haven't had it done in a long time here. So we've just been addressing it really as each project comes up.
Right, which isn't the best way necessarily.
I mean, what we do as a facilities committee, we do that internally. The facilities committee addresses all the projects that are known,
Yeah,
but there could be things that are unknown. So,
and again, with the additions and the new construction, which isn't new anymore, it's time to start looking to see, when replacements are going to need to be done, so that you have a good idea.
Better to have a schedule.
Yes, it's going to be a lot easier for budgeting in the future, so you know that the useful life of the roof is coming, 2 more years, that's it. So you might get a 3rd year out of it, but you should start planning on budgeting for that.
Will your technology component come into that? Like your new routers or whatever? Well, where does that
we
go?
have a separate technology.
That's a separate,
In your tech plan?
yeah.
We have a separate technology. It was done just last year. The 5-year technology plan was done.
So
Grant was
basically,
interested.
is it a facilities maintenance plan?
Excuse me?
A facilities
The
maintenance
facility
plan?
right. So if the board is okay with looking into doing something like that, we'll have that as a motion at the next meeting.
Lou, at least in some way, that should sync up with what has been done with the strategic plan, to the extent that it might influence some reconfiguration or movement of some infrastructure. It is probably just worthwhile kind of just making sure all that syncs up.
Because what will happen, we'll have the strategic plan proposal, recommendations in October. I don't think the architect will be here much before the beginning of the year anyway to go through all the buildings. So if there is some component that comes out of strategic, right, we'll make sure that he's aware of what our plans are.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll work into what he sees needs to be done.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions? Seeing none, I'd like to move motions 1 and 2. Just as information, there was not a big report this week, so.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. DiGiorgio?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Ms. Sui?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Okay, next would be policy. We did not have a policy meeting since our last meeting, so I'd like to move motion, I'd like to make a change, that should be number 1. I'd like to move motion 1 under policy. Is there a second?
Motion 1?
1?
It says 2, but it should be 1.
It says 2, but it should be 1.
Oh.
Questions or comments on the policies?
Victor, to the athletic office, please.
Seeing none, have a roll call, please.
Mr. DiGiorgio?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Ms. Sui?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Personnel?
We had a personnel meeting yesterday, at which we discussed constructing salary guides for the central office. And as everyone knows, we are continuing our search for a new BA. And then as well, because we adopted the contract with school boards for the superintendent search, that timeline will start probably next month, which I will get more information on, and the board will be filled in on what the schedule's going to be. That's really it.
Motion?
Yeah. I have items 1 through
I believe it's 13.
13.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Always
Yes.
Always a question. Number 7, non-certified staff LPN at the high school. That is, because you already have 2, right? One of them.
That's for a particular student. That was part of what we presented in the budget last year to reduce special education costs because we're not contracting service anymore. So we brought them in-house at a considerable savings. I think it's going to save us like $13,000 this year and then something like $24,000 next year because we have to do a little buyout clause. Agency. So that was part of that big package that we presented in order to bring the paras, to get the full-time paras. That
This
was
person's
part of
going
that.
to, so this is going, she's dedicated to
Yeah.
the special ed. That's
Yeah,
good.
so it's at a cost reduction.
And number 8, didn't we approve, there was a date change or something for that? I thought we approved this. I'm confused, but last time, number 8, did we approve it? I thought we did. Maybe.
Number 8,
She was here, I thought we approved it.
I think the change, if I remember correctly, that it said September 1st, and that was not
oh,
correct.
yeah.
It had to be changed to
Dates.
August 24th.
Oh, she ended up starting in August instead, we just haven't.
She was helping, she was part of the interviews to hire her replacement.
Okay.
So right after we hired the guy.
Also, I'd like to point out number 1, which we eliminated, right, we eliminated school treasurer, which will save the district another, I think, $6,000, so.
That's part of that overall.
Yeah, Jamie.
Right,
The thing we approved last.
right.
Any last one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, seeing no other questions, roll call.
Ms. DiGiorgio?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Ms. Subi? Mrs. Stover?
Yes.
Ms. Rochu?
Yes.
Ms. Rochu, I have 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, and 13.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Next item is public questions and comments. Is there anyone in the public that would like to, they left?
Public
I thought they were making a comment.
They were parked
They're
down.
parked out. Seeing none, we'll go to the Strategic Planning Committee. I'll leave that to Jen. I think she did.
Just repeating that next month, there'll be a presentation of the goals and objectives created by the administrative team this summer, and then we'll look at next steps from there.
Supplementary matters. Anybody have any supplementary matters they'd like to bring up?
I haven't, I apologize. I meant to get the Community Relations Committee started. My plan is to come up with a date sometime after next week. On September 30th, I officially become a father-in-law, and focused on that, so lucky him, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, lucky guy.
So hopefully after September 30th, next week.
Great.
You're like, what's Robert De Niro, who was
Meet
it?
the parents.
Yeah, Meet the Parents, right?
In
A circle of trust.
Today, I paid retail for a tuxedo shirt.
Oh, my God. Oh, my
I'm
God.
still twitching.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Did it right to
Any other supplementary matters? Again, seeing none, motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you.
You're a trooper. Oh, thanks. You're a trooper.